Welcome to the Biomedical Podcast, the podcast that connects groundbreaking research with real-world answers. I'm Dr. Bensada, and in every episode, we examine new published articles to take a close look at the discoveries that are changing how we see science. We aim to fire up your interest and start a talk that goes beyond the lab.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Biomedical Podcast. This is actually our fifth deep dive together.
That's right, number 5.
And today we're jumping into a really fascinating topic, polyphenols. You've probably heard that term thrown around.
Oh, definitely. They're these natural compounds in plants.
Exactly. And we're going to look at some of the recent science, exploring how they really impact our health.
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz around them. They seem to be these sort of natural powerhouses. We've pulled together several studies to, get a handle on how they might contribute to our well-being.
And our goal, as always, is to give you the key insights, the really important stuff, without, making it overly complex.
Right. We want to get straight to the core findings.
We know you want to get up to speed quickly and properly, so let's dive in. First things first. What exactly are polyphenols?
Okay, so basically, polyphenols are natural bioactive compounds. Plants make loads of them.
Bioactive meaning they have an effect in our bodies.
Exactly. They're involved in protecting the plant, and they often give fruits and veggies their, bright colors.
Oh.
There are different categories. A big one is flavonoids. That includes things like anthocyanins, which give berries their reds and blues.
Yeah.
Then there are others, the non-flavonoids.
So why do plants bother making them? Is it just for color?
Not just that. Plants produce them often as a reaction to stress. Think too much sun, maybe pests attacking them. They're sometimes called secondary metabolites.
So it's like their own little defense mechanism.
Pretty much, yeah. It helps them survive.
Interesting. Okay, so plants make them. How do we actually get the benefit? I mean, getting them out of the plant and into our system can't be super straightforward, right?
That's a really good point. Extraction is actually a big deal in research. There are traditional ways, but they can be slow or use a lot of energy or solvents.
Right.
So researchers are looking at newer, maybe greener techniques.
Yeah.
Like supercritical fluid extraction, SFE.
Okay, sounds fancy.
It kind of is. There was a study, Zhang and colleagues in 2022, that used supercritical CO2, basically pressurized carbon dioxide, to pull anthocyanins out of grape pomace, the leftover stuff.
And did it work well?
Yeah, they found they could improve how much they got out by playing with the temperature and pressure. It's about optimizing it.
So trying to be more efficient and maybe kinder to the environment.
Exactly. Another one is microwave-assisted extraction, or MAE. That's seen as pretty eco-friendly too. Saves time, uses less solvent, less energy. There was research on using it for hawthorn polyphenols.
And does it matter what you use to extract them, like the liquid?
Oh, absolutely. The solvent choice is key. Things like ethanol water mixtures are common. Different polyphenols have different polarities, sort of like how oil and water don't mix easily, so the right solvent pulls out specific types better. The Hawthorne study highlighted that too.
Okay, so we get them out of the plant, but then how much do our bodies actually absorb and use? I've heard this term, bioavailability.
Yes, bioavailability. That's crucial. It's basically the fraction of the polyphenol that actually gets into our bloodstream and can have an effect after we eat it.
And is it high? Do we absorb most of them?
Well, here's the interesting part. Research, like that paper on maternal polyphenols, suggests it might be quite low for direct absorption in the small intestine. Maybe only 5 to 10% for many of them.
Really? Just 5 to 10%? That seems tiny.
It does sound low, doesn't it? But there are reasons. What else is in the food matrix, we call it, that can trap the polyphenols?
No. Oh.
Their chemical structure matters too, how big the molecule is, if it's attached to sugars, things like that.
And you mentioned something else influencing it.
Yes. And this is fascinating, our gut microbiota. The trillions of bacteria living in our gut.
Our gut bacteria, how do they play a role?
They're like little chemical processing plants. They can break down those complex polyphenols that we can't absorb directly into smaller, simpler compounds that our body can then absorb.
Wow. So our gut microbes are actually unlocking some of these benefits for us.
In a big way, yes. And it seems to be a two-way street. The polyphenols can also influence the gut bacteria.
How so?
They can act sort of like prebiotics, food for the good bacteria. Some studies, like with resveratrol, showed it increased beneficial bugs like bifidobacterium and lactobacillus.
That's incredible. Okay, so once they are in our system, either directly or via our gut buddies, What are the main health benefits everyone talks about? I always hear antioxidant.
That's definitely a major one, yes.
Yeah.
Polyphenols are potent antioxidants.
What does that mean exactly, in simple terms?
Okay, so our body naturally produces unstable molecules called free radicals just through, living and metabolism. Too many of these can damage cells, proteins, even DNA. That's oxidative stress.
Right, sounds bad.
It can be. Antioxidants, like polyphenols, basically step in and neutralize these free radicals. They scavenge them, reducing that damage.
So protecting our cells, that makes sense. What about for heart health? That comes up a lot too.
Yes, huge area. There's quite strong evidence for cardiovascular benefits. One key thing they do is improve endothelial function.
The endothelium, that's the lining of blood vessels.
Exactly. Polyphenols, especially from things like berries, maybe a bit of red wine, dark chocolate, green tea, they can help boost the production of nitric oxide, NO.
And NO is good.
Very good for blood vessels. It helps them relax and widen, which means better blood flow, potentially lower blood pressure. It keeps things flexible.
Like keeping the pipes clear and working well.
That's a good analogy. And specific polyphenols show promise too. Like camphorol found in broccoli, green tea, it's linked to antihypertensive effects.
Lowering blood pressure.
Right. And others like flavonols, think apples, tea, cocoa, they seem to help against atherosclerosis, that plaque buildup, and also hypertension.
So multiple benefits for the heart and vessels.
Seems that way. And there's even some really interesting, though early, research looking at maternal health. The idea is that if moms get enough polyphenols during pregnancy, it might help program the baby for better cardiovascular, kidney, and metabolic health later on. Part of that deal had concept developmental origins of health and disease.
Wow, so affects the start even before birth.
Potentially, yes. And speaking of kidneys, resveratrol, that famous polyphenol from grapes, has shown benefits in animal models of kidney disease, reducing damage, oxidative stress, inflammation there.
Okay, fascinating. What about metabolic health? Things like weight management or blood sugar.
Another promising area. Polyphenols seem to help regulate how we handle glucose, or sugar.
How?
Several ways, potentially. They might reduce how much carbohydrate we absorb from our food, tweak the enzymes involved in glucose metabolism, and maybe even improve how our cells listen to insulin.
Improving insulin sensitivity.
That's the idea. For example, there was research on granadilla. It's a type of passion fruit. Its polyphenols showed potential for lowering blood sugar and lipids in mice, actually comparable to green tea polyphenols in that study.
And did they check for side effects, like on the liver?
They did. Good point. In that particular study, the liver histology looked okay. No signs of fatty liver, which is reassuring. And Nakamura and Tanogai also did relevant work on triglycerides.
So potential help for blood sugar and maybe cholesterol levels without obvious harm in those models.
That's what the data suggests, yes. And remember the gut connection we talked about. That healthier gut environment likely plays into better metabolic health overall, too.
It all seems connected. What about the brain? That's a big concern for many people as they age.
Absolutely. And there's exciting work on neuroprotective effects. Polyphenols might help protect our brain cells.
How would they do that?
Well, they could improve brain plasticity. That's the brain's ability to change, adapt, form new connections. Some hints they might even act as mood modulators, though that's complex. Animal studies have looked at polyphenols, like quercetin, found in onions and apples, for potential use in diseases involving protein clumps, like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's.
Really? Helping with those protein aggregation issues?
The preclinical work suggests it's worth investigating. And resveratrol, again, it showed promise in animal models for protecting against brain damage caused by lack of blood flow, like in a stroke.
That's significant. Is there any human evidence for brain benefits?
Yes, and that's encouraging. Some clinical trials looking at diets rich in flavonoids have shown improvements in cognitive functions, thinking skills, and interestingly, this seemed to happen regardless of age.
So not just for older adults.
Apparently not, suggesting benefits across the lifespan.
But you mentioned bioavailability earlier. Getting things into the brain must be even harder, right? The blood-brain barrier.
Exactly. The BBB is a very tight barrier protecting the brain. It's a challenge for many compounds, including polyphenols.
So how do researchers tackle that?
Well, one strategy being explored is nanoencapsulation. Basically, wrapping the polyphenols in tiny little packages, nanoscale delivery systems, to help them sneak across the barrier.
Wow, like tiny Trojan horses for polyphenol.
Kind of, yeah. It's pretty cutting-edge stuff.
Okay, what about our eyes? Any role for polyphenols in vision?
Yes, there's growing interest there too, especially for degenerative eye diseases.
Like what?
Well, flavonoids like quercetin again, and also tannic acid, have shown potential in lab studies to protect the retina's light-sensing cells from damage, say, from too much light exposure.
Protecting the photoreceptors.
Right. And some flavonoids might even help stabilize a key protein for vision called rhodopsin. This could be relevant for conditions like retinitis pigmentosa, RP, which involves mutations in rhodopsin.
So they might help the mutated protein work better.
In vitro studies suggest some polyphenols can improve the stability, folding, and function of these mutated rhodopsin proteins. It's early days, lab-based, but promising.
Interesting. Anything else for eyes?
Well, the general antioxidant effect we discussed earlier is thought to be relevant for slowing down age-related macular degeneration, AMD. Reducing oxidative stress in the retina seems key there.
It really seems like these compounds pop up everywhere. You also touched on inflammation earlier. Can we circle back to that?
Sure. That anti-inflammatory action is another major benefit. Certain flavonoids can actually block enzymes that drive the inflammatory process.
Like which enzymes?
Key ones like QX-cyclooxygenase and LOX-lipoxygenase. You might know HEOX inhibitors as common anti-inflammatory drugs.
Right, like ibuprofen.
Exactly. So some flavonoids might work in a somewhat similar way, naturally. And bigger picture epidemiological research, looking at large populations, often links diets high in flavonoids with lower levels of chronic inflammation.
So diet really can influence inflammation levels.
The evidence certainly points that way.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground looking at various studies. You mentioned earlier the work of Professor Juan Carlos Carmona-Hernandez. Could you tell us a bit more about his specific contributions?
Yes, Professor Carmona-Hernandez, who holds a Ph.D. from the University of Manizales, has done some really valuable work in this area. His research is focused on understanding the antioxidant power of polyphenols from specific plant sources.
Like which ones?
For instance, he's authored work looking at polyphenols from Mauritia flexuosa, which is also known as aguache, a palm fruit from the Amazon, and also Theobroma grandiflorum, which is related to cacao. His studies, like one looking at the flavonoid to polyphenol ratio, help us understand how things like the plant source, or even how it's processed, like dehydration, affect the antioxidant punch you get.
So it's not just that a plant has polyphenols, but the specifics matter, which ones, how many, and maybe how we prepare the food.
Precisely. His work contributes to that deeper understanding of how to really characterize and potentially harness these antioxidant properties effectively from different natural sources.
That makes a lot of sense. This has been incredibly insightful, really digging into the science behind polyphenols. Let's maybe try and summarize the key takeaways for everyone listening.
Okay, so the big picture is polyphenols are this incredibly diverse group of compounds made by plants.
Right, found everywhere in the plant kingdom.
And they offer a really wide range of potential health benefits. We talked about their power as antioxidants, fighting cell damage.
And their anti-inflammatory effects, calming down inflammation pathways.
Exactly. Plus, their interaction with our gut microbes, acting almost like prebiotics and being transformed into usable forms.
And all this seems to impact so many areas: heart health, metabolic balance, brain function, even our eyesight.
It really touches on multiple systems.
But it's also important to add a note of caution, right? Or maybe just context.
Absolutely. While the research, especially what we see in lab studies, cell cultures, and animal models, is incredibly promising, we definitely need more robust studies in humans. We need to better understand optimal doses, which specific polyphenols are best for which outcomes, and the long-term effects of supplementation versus just getting them from a whole food diet.
So the potential is clearly there. But the fine-tuning, the specific recommendations for humans, still needs more work.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So for you listening at home or on the go, maybe this is some food for thought, literally. Think about the colors on your plate. Are you getting a good variety of fruits, vegetables, maybe some tea, dark chocolate?
Yeah, incorporating a range of these polyphenol-rich foods seems like a sensible approach, based on what we know so far.
And it leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it?
It really does. Given this complex and beneficial relationship between plant compounds like polyphenols and our health, makes you wonder, what other natural compounds are out there in plants, just waiting to be discovered?
Right. What other hidden benefits might nature hold?
And maybe even more profoundly, how can we better understand the incredibly complex dance between all these different dietary components and the intricate workings of our own bodies? It's such an exciting frontier for science. Stay tuned for a new literature review. Until next time on the Biomedical Podcast.